Hello, thank you for watching the video. Even though you were able to walk just fine until now, your legs and lower back suddenly become weak and you might not be able to walk in the future. Certain habits are common among such people. I work as a doctor in an area with many elderly. There are people in their 70s and 80s who are still walking briskly on their own feet and enjoying life. Some people need nursing care because their legs and back have weakened and they can't walk. I see many types of people, including those who are still healthy and living normally. Later in life, you want to walk, travel, and shop on your own, right? So this time, I'd like to introduce 5 common characteristics of people whose legs and backs suddenly become weak. Suddenly, please take a look at this diagram. We go from being healthy to gradually becoming weaker over time, and eventually we need nursing care. The medical community calls this intermediate stage frailty. So what is frailty? When you need nursing care and require someone's help in your daily life. It means a somewhat weaker state just before that moment. This frail condition can be reversed to a healthy state by improving your lifestyle habits. Japanese people are known for longevity, but frailty is also common among them. It is said that 10% of people in their 70s and 30% of people in their 80s are in a frail condition. In other words, once you reach your 80s, 1 out of 3 people is in a state just before needing nursing care. By listening to and practicing what is in this video, you can reduce your risk of needing nursing care in the future. So please be sure to listen. In this video, I'll talk about how your legs and lower back can suddenly age rapidly. I'll introduce 5 habits that can cause your legs and lower back to age rapidly. In the second part, I'll explain whether walking really has health benefits. And in the third part, I'll talk about the risks of exercising. Does too much exercise negatively affect your health? If so, how many steps per day does it become dangerous? I'll explain that as well. And in the fourth part, as a doctor, I'll explain exactly how much you should walk in a day, including specific amounts of exercise and time. And not only that, but also a certain topic that has recently attracted attention in the medical community. I'll also introduce some surprising health benefits of exercise. And in the 5th section, I'll briefly explain an easy way for you to self-check whether your muscle strength is actually declining. Please watch until the end. 5 habits of people whose legs and lower back age and become unable to walk. Here's the first one. It's not getting enough protein. Everyone in their 40s, 50s and 60s worries about metabolic syndrome. That's why many people try to restrict their calories so they don't gain weight. However, when you reach your 70s and 80s, losing weight actually becomes a risk. In your 50s and 60s, it's important to prevent metabolic syndrome. And from your 70s to your 90s, it's important to prevent frailty. In other words, while you may have avoided overeating when younger, once in your 70s, it's important to eat well and ensure you get enough nutrition. Be mindful to eat enough while getting the proper nutrients. As we get older, it's said that our muscle mass decreases by about 1% each year. If our muscle mass peaks at age 25, by the time we reach 60, it has decreased by an average of 60%. It's said that, on average, it drops to less than half. So, please make sure to pay close attention to the amount of protein included in your meals. At the very least, the amount of protein you need each day is calculated by multiplying your body weight by grams. For example, if you weigh 50 kilograms, 50 grams of protein per day is sufficient. To be precise, it's your body weight times the number of grams plus a little extra. If you weigh 50 kilo, aim for 50-60 grams. If 60 kilo, aim for 60-70 grams. Keep it simple. I think a lot of people feel like they can't remember the grams of protein in different foods, so let me give you a simple explanation here. Basically, you can fit almost any food in the palm of your hand. Try to remember the amount in grams based on the size that fits in the palm of your hand. For example, 1 pack of natto contains about 8 grams of protein. 1 fried egg has about 6 grams of protein. A glass of milk also contains about 6 grams of protein, so food's rich in protein. If food fits in your palm, it usually has 6 to 8 grams of protein. Let's remember it that way. And when we talk about foods rich in protein, we're talking about fish and meat, right? If you have about 50 grams of pork loin, which fits in the palm of your hand, it contains about 13 grams of protein. A typical serving of grilled salmon contains about 20 grams of protein per 70 grams. So if you want to efficiently get protein, it might be more effective to eat fish, which provides plenty of protein, rather than fatty pork and similar meats. It's said that eating red meat increases the risk of colon cancer. That's another reason I recommend eating fish. Check the description box for the colon cancer video. For example, if you were able to eat all the foods I just mentioned, natto, fried eggs, milk, pork loin and grilled salmon, in 3 meals a day, you would get 53 grams of protein just from these. So, if you weigh 50 kilograms, this amount would be enough for you. It's convenient to remember this as a rough guideline. Since it's an easy way to remember, I think it would be helpful to rewind the video and take notes. The second of 5 habits that can leave you unable to walk is breaking a bone. Actually, the main reason Japanese people end up needing nursing care is that about half of the causes are due to muscle weakness and falls that come with it. Strokes, heart attacks, and cancer are factors, but even if you prevent them, about half the cases still result from these types of issues. Factors. Isn't it surprising? However, even if you fall and break a bone, these days some people think lightly. If I have surgery, I'll recover well and be discharged, but you need to be careful. There's some data like this. When someone falls and breaks the femur, which is the bone at the base of the leg, the 5-year mortality rate for those people is said to be higher than the average 5-year mortality rate for people with cancer. It's difficult to compare them directly, but you can see that breaking a leg bone is about as dangerous as having cancer. If you break your leg and can't walk, and you stay in the hospital for just 2 weeks without using your muscles, it's said that we lose as much muscle strength as we would in 7 years. Isn't that surprising? Also, there are reports that the 1-year mortality rate for people who break the bone at the base of their leg is 10 to 30%. Simply put, 1 out of 4 people dies within a year after breaking a leg bone. The reason it's so dangerous is that once you break a bone, your muscle strength decreases, making it easier to fall again, and your physical strength also declines, making it harder to withstand sudden illnesses like infections, which increases the risk of death. Once you fall, you become afraid of falling again and don't want to go out, so you end up staying at home and can't go outside. Your activity decreases, you lose your appetite, eat less, and as a result, muscle strength declines, increasing the risk of falling again and creating a vicious cycle. While working, I was impressed by someone effectively preventing falls. Her family member, a caregiver, was a woman in her 80s. They put visible stickers near steps where tripping was likely, so when she got up at night for the bathroom and her legs were unsteady, she wouldn't trip. Knowing she often fell, they made sure to shine a flashlight on her feet. They made sure to shine a light on her feet, and they also installed sturdy handrails in the house so she could grab onto them if she was about to fall. They took various measures to prevent falls. I hope this can be helpful for your own future and to help prevent your parents from falling. Habits that quickly weaken your legs and lower back, making walking difficult. The third one is this: not getting enough vitamin D. Actually, this vitamin D hormone is said to be lacking in many people in Japan. To absorb and use vitamin D, you need to get it from your diet, and in addition, you need to get sunlight to activate that vitamin D. People in sun-poor areas, especially northern Japan, are more likely to have vitamin D deficiency. What happens if you don't get enough vitamin D? That's right, you become more prone to fractures. Vitamin D is an important nutrient for strengthening your bones. By taking vitamin D together with calcium, which is the main component of bones, there is data showing that fractures decreased and that maintaining muscle strength helped reduce falls. In fact, I also prescribe vitamin D to patients with osteoporosis. So, in reality, what kinds of foods should we eat and how much to get enough vitamin D? Vitamin D is... It's said that you need about 900 units. It's said that Japanese people get about 300 units of vitamin D just by living their normal lives. So in addition to your regular lifestyle, you need about 600 more units. Make sure you get enough. You can buy vitamin D rich foods for under 500 yen. The food I recommend is, of course, milk. As I mentioned first, milk also contains protein. It also contains calcium, which is the main component of bones, and on top of that, it contains vitamin D as well. Even if you take vitamin D, it won't help strengthen your bones unless you also get calcium, which is the raw material for bones. 1 cup of milk contains about 100 units of vitamin D, so to get 600 units just from milk, you'd have to drink 6 cups. That's why you should try to get vitamin D from other sources as well. Another food I recommend is salmon. As I mentioned first, salmon, a palm-sized piece of salmon, about 70 grams, contains 20 grams of protein. In addition, that salmon contains 200 units of vitamin D, so if you eat it for breakfast, lunch and dinner, you'll get 60 grams of protein and about 600 units of vitamin D just from that. You might get tired of eating salmon every time, but it could be good to make a conscious effort to include it somewhere in your day. However, please be careful because salted salmon can sometimes have too much salt. Here's the 4th of 5 habits that can suddenly weaken your legs and lower back, making walking difficult. Exercise. Do you all have an exercise routine? Even if you decide to give it your best shot, sometimes you end up quitting after just a few days. That happens, right? Honestly, I feel the same way. People say things like, let's walk 6,000 steps a day, or let's walk 10,000 steps a day. But in reality, it's hard to walk that much. And it's hard to keep it up, but how much do we actually need to walk to see health benefits? I think a lot of people wonder about that. Good news for those people, research like this exists from a joint study between Poland and the United States. There's a study that analyzed the step counts of about 220,000 people. As a result, it was found that to have a positive effect on the heart and blood vessels, only 2,300 steps were enough. If you walk for just 10 minutes, that's already 1,000 steps. In other words, 2,300 steps is a distance you can reach by walking for about 20 minutes. What do you think? Just by walking for 20 minutes a day, you might be able to lower your risk of heart disease. Overdoing it or walking too much can also be risky. It might be. Is there anyone around you who is working out too hard? According to a study by Harvard University, people who burn as much as 3,500 kilocalories a week through exercise. There is data showing that people who exercise too much have an increased risk of death. Burning 3,500 kilocalories in a week, if converted to the number of minutes you walk per day, it comes out to just under 3 hours a day. If you walk for just under 3 hours a day, that's too much walking and you're burning too many calories. There's a possibility of that. This only shows the link between calories burned and mortality risk, so it doesn't mean walking too much raises your risk of death. So you need to be careful, because this isn't that kind of direct study. But whether it's walking, running, or playing sports, burning too many calories in a week can actually have a negative impact on your health. So, if you suddenly set a high goal, like 5,000 or 7,000 steps a day, you won't be able to keep it up. Try walking just 20 minutes a day, or 2,000 steps. Thinking of it this way makes walking easier. Don't you agree? Walking 10 minutes out and back is 20 minutes. Hope this helps. Your legs and lower back can suddenly weaken, making it hard to walk. Here is the 5th habit out of the 5 selected habits. It's not having any connection with society. The inability to walk and social connections. If you're wondering, are they really related? There's actually research on this. People who participate in community activities but don't exercise at all, and those who don't participate in community activities and simply exercise in silence. When you compare these two types of people, which do you think is more likely to need nursing care in the future? You might think that people who work hard to exercise alone are less likely to become physically weak, so their risk of needing care is lower. But actually, people who exercise alone in silence have a higher risk. Exercise is important. Exercise is important. Various health campaigns encourage everyone to walk together and do different activities, but actually, those kinds of participating in community activities and socializing, not just exercising, reduces the risk of needing nursing care. That's what this shows. If you don't have connections with society and feel lonely, it's like a person is smoking about 15 cigarettes a day. It's said that there's a health risk equivalent to that. In addition, there is data showing that loneliness increases the risk of depression, dementia, and even mortality. Of course, people who don't like socializing don't have to force themselves to connect with others. If you're unmotivated and hesitant, even if you connect with society reluctantly, your dementia risk matches those with no connections. That's what people are saying, so I really hope that but the things you want to try, enjoy, and people you really want to talk to, it's important to stay connected with those kinds of people. As a guideline, try to go outside at least once a day in some way. Talk with friends or acquaintances at least once a week, and once a month, try to experience something enjoyable or fulfilling. try participating in local activities or sports. Please use these as guidelines. Now, let's review their first lesson. Here are 5 habits of people whose legs and hips suddenly weaken and become unable to walk. First, a decrease in protein. Remember that the necessary amount of protein is your body weight multiplied by the number of grams. Second, experiencing a fracture. I explained that having a fracture increases your risk of death as much as getting cancer. Third, a lack of vitamin D. Vitamin D helps strengthen your bones and reduces falls. I explained that it may help maintain your muscles. Fourth, exercising. 20 minutes of exercise a day can also have positive effects on your heart and blood vessels. Fifth, staying connected with society. Loneliness is as risky as smoking 15 cigarettes daily. It's better to exercise while staying socially connected than alone in silence. These kinds of things are the keys to living a vibrant life in the later years, so I hope you'll keep them in mind. Do you know about METs, the unit used to measure physical activity? It represents the amount of exercise. It's an index where sitting quietly at rest is 1 metabolic equivalent of task and walking at a normal pace is an exercise intensity of 3 metabolic equivalent of task S. Jogging is said to be 7 METs and climbing stairs is 9 METs. If you do a walking exercise of 3 METs 5 times a week, that's 3 times 5, which equals 15 METs of exercise. It's said that people who exercised 15 METs a week had a 30% lower mortality rate and risk of heart and vascular diseases compared to those who didn't. Not only does it lower the mortality rate, but it also helps prevent arteriosclerosis, which is the cause of clogged blood vessels, high blood pressure, diabetes, and lipid disorders. There is solid data showing that exercise can improve these conditions. So, when you go to the hospital, the doctor often tells you, exercise, exercise. But it's not easy to actually do it. I'm sure many of you have experienced this. In fact, Japanese people are diligent and work hard. They are known worldwide for having some of the longest sitting times per day. When asked, people said they sit an average of 8 hours a day. Among them, 38% of men and 33% of women said they sit for as long as 8 hours a day. This is quite a long time, even by global standards. And according to an analysis that summarized 34 studies on the relationship between sitting time and mortality rate, the longer you sit, they have concluded that the mortality rate increases. This increase in mortality rate due to sitting occurs when you sit for more than 60 minutes a day. It's said that you can reduce the risk by exercising and sitting. Try not to sit for more than 30 minutes at a time and every 30 minutes. Data shows that taking breaks every 30 minutes can help reduce the mortality rate. By taking breaks every 30 minutes, there is also data showing that blood sugar levels improve and triglyceride levels decrease. So, moving your body frequently like this is actually very important for your life. However, on the other hand, you also need to be careful not to move too much. Especially for those of you watching this video, I think many of you are already concerned about your health. You might think you're doing something good by working hard to move your body, but in reality, that could actually be an unhealthy behavior. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Now let's review the second lesson, sitting quietly. Sitting quietly uses 1 metabolic equivalent of task while walking is 3 metabolic equivalent of task S. Exercising at 3 metabolic equivalent of task S. If you do it for 5 hours a week, your mortality rate drops by as much as 30% compared to those who don't. In other words, if you walk for 5 hours a week, your mortality rate may decrease. And Japanese people also spend a lot of time sitting, and spending long periods sitting leads to an increase in mortality rate. And by taking breaks every 30 minutes or exercising for about an hour on days when you spend a long time sitting, I explained that you can improve the increase in mortality rate. Exercise is good for your health. However, things like let's exercise 3 times a week or let's walk for an hour a day, even if you're told that, it's hard to keep it up, right? Even I actually haven't made exercise a habit myself. At the very least, I try to exercise twice a week, but the reality is it's hard to keep it up. I have a suggestion for everyone. Actually, I believe that even taking just 1 step a day counts as exercise. Even if you exercise just once a week for only 10 minutes a day, it can have health benefits. If your cholesterol is high, your blood sugar is high, or your blood pressure is high at your health checkup. If you've been told that and got nutrition advice from your doctor or a public health nurse, and you try to exercise hard for an hour on your day off, Even if you decide to do that, isn't it often the case that you end up forgetting about that habit before you know it? This week work is busy, or today the wind is strong, so you make excuses to skip it, right? I used to do the same. Once you skip even once, the tension fades and you start thinking, maybe I can skip today or even next week, and soon you often forget to exercise entirely. For people like that, what I want to suggest is to not push yourself too hard and start with a short amount of time. Is to start exercising within a reasonable range that isn't too hard for you. In a joint study conducted in Poland and the United States, they analyzed 226,000 people from around the world. As a result, it was reported that walking just 2,300 steps a day was effective in having a positive impact on the heart and blood vessels. To walk 1,000 steps, it takes about 10 minutes. That means if you walk for 10 minutes a day and then walk back for another 10 minutes, just those 20 minutes can actually lower your risk for blood vessel problems and make you healthier. Many people in Japan are very health conscious. Pedometers became popular, and since man in Mampuki means 10,000, people often aim for 10,000 steps daily. People tend to set high goals, but for older individuals, 10,000 steps a day might not be necessary. A study of 4,165 Japanese adults aged 65 and older. In a study, people walking under 5,000 steps daily increased their steps by 1,000. And as a result, their risk of death decreased by 23%. However, for those already walking over 5,000 steps, there are reports that increasing the number of steps beyond that did not provide additional health benefits. In other words, for elderly people, walking up to 5,000 steps a day has health benefits, but I think it's safe to say that walking more than that has little effect. Also, in other studies, healthy elderly people saw more health benefits the more they walked, from 5,000 to 7,000 steps a day. However, even if they walked more than that, there was still no relationship between the number of steps and the risk of death. Some reports say walking more than that offers no extra health benefits. More importantly, too much exercise can actually be dangerous. There are even reports like that. In a study conducted at Harvard University, people who burned 3,500 kilocalories of energy in a week through exercise had a higher risk of death compared to those who exercised less, according to reports. 10 minutes of exercise burns about 30 kilocalories, so to burn 3,500 kilocalories. In order to burn that through exercise, you would need to walk 16,000 steps a day, even if you exercised every day. In other words, 16,000 steps every single day. If you walk that much for your health, that might actually burn too many calories and raise your risk of death. That's possible. The key point in calorie burn studies is there haven't been experiments on whether walking actually increased the risk of death, so it's only speculation. But whether it's walking or playing sports, I think it's still important to be careful not to overdo it. It's natural to choose activities that fit your age and physical strength. If you don't keep your activity level appropriate for your own abilities, I see many people in my clinic who end up overdoing their exercise and start having knee pain or back pain. Doing too much of anything can be harmful. I highly recommend finding the right intensity and amount of exercise that suits you. Now let's review the third lesson. I mentioned that just walking 2,300 steps a day, going out for just 10 minutes and coming back in 10 minutes can lower your risk of heart and blood vessel problems. And especially for older adults. Even if you walk more than 5,000 steps, there are few additional health benefits. And in fact, overdoing exercise can actually be a problem. I also explained that if you walk more than 16,000 steps every day, it could actually harm your health. A patient who visits my outpatient clinic, Ms. I, a woman in her late 70s who visits my clinic, enjoys park golf with her husband 3 times a week. She says, I was never good at exercise, but park golf is fun, and my husband likes it too, so now I never miss a chance to exercise. It's true that with park golf, you can walk a lot while chatting with friends, and if you go with someone else, you feel obligated to keep your promise to them, which makes it easier to keep going. Before you know it, you're exercising just by having fun. People like her are able to keep up with exercise. That's how I see it. When you start exercising even alone, try setting rules or rewards for yourself to add obligation and make it easier to stick with. Let me start with the conclusion. If you're an older adult, aim for 5,000 to 7,000 steps a day. And if you can exercise for about 40 minutes a day, that's even better. Adults under senior age should target 8,000 steps and 1 hour of exercise daily. I suggest trying this. These are the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare's exercise guidelines. These are the recommended guidelines. As I mentioned earlier, even just walking 2,300 steps has health benefits. So don't push yourself too hard from the start by trying to do an hour a day. What's important is to keep it up. Not just walking, but other exercises too. There are many reports saying those are important too. For example, strength training and balance exercises and flexibility exercises like stretching. These are called multi-component exercises, and combining these various types of exercises is effective. As for how to actually do them, activities like calisthenics, dance and radio exercises combine these types of movements. Doing a variety of exercises, not just walking. Doing these activities is said to reduce the risk of falling by 30% and the risk of falling and breaking a bone by 15% to 66%. In order to live an active life in the later years, if you fall and break a bone, you won't be able to go shopping or eat out or even travel, which you love. To prevent that, simple walking, stretching, balance, and strength training exercises too. It's recommended to incorporate them. One exercise method I recommend is multitasking exercises. For example, if sitting for long periods increases mortality rates and you usually sit while working, then using a standing desk, try introducing one, or when you're lying down looking at your smartphone. For example, try stretching once every 30 minutes while looking at your phone. Even just doing this is effective enough. When watching television, instead of just letting your legs hang down, you can stretch your knees out straight and train your thighs. Or when you're cooking, you can stand on your tiptoes to train your calves. By combining exercise with your daily activities, you can increase your physical activity without much effort. Please let us know in the comments what kind of exercises you do. Let me introduce a sport that's gaining popularity, especially with seniors. That sport is Tai Chi. Do you all know about Tai Chi? You might imagine seeing people in China gathering in parks in the morning and moving slowly on television, and that's exactly it. Tai Chi has a history of several hundred years. It's a Chinese martial art with centuries of history. It was a martial art. In Tai Chi, you focus your mind and control your breathing. By practicing breathing and relaxation, you can achieve mental focus, and by performing slow, smooth movements, it also serves as a balance exercise. And now, Tai Chi is actually being used as a mind-body therapy. There is accumulating data suggesting that it may improve health. Mr. T, a 70-year-old patient who visits my clinic, is one of the people who became hooked on Tai Chi. Mr. T had declining kidney function and started coming to my clinic. When I first examined Mr. T, he was thin. I was concerned about his low muscle strength. When I asked about his habits, I learned his husband told me that after losing his husband, he completely lost his exercise habits. Mr. T now lives alone, and since losing his husband, he's less active and has lost his appetite. His food intake has decreased and his muscle strength is steadily declining. Then, one winter, Mr. T slipped on the snowy road outside and fell, and unfortunately he broke a bone. He managed to have surgery and the fracture was treated, but his muscle strength declined even further and I was quite worried about him. I suggested a local neighborhood association program for Mr. T. They offer Tai Chi classes, so I suggested, why not join them? How about it? I casually suggested. Then Mr. T said, well, I'll think about it. He went home that day, but a year later, Mr. T was already completely hooked on Tai Chi. He had regained the weight he lost after his fracture and quickly became healthier. There are two major benefits to Tai Chi. One is that it helps you train your balance. Tai Chi involves slowly shifting your center of gravity while in a half-sitting posture, so your inner muscles and core strength are trained to help you maintain your balance. Actually, I once had the chance to try Tai Chi myself. As I kept doing it, my muscles gradually got tired and my body slowly warmed up. I could feel myself starting to sweat. In order to prevent falling in the future, doing exercises like this, having a good sense of balance is important, and I thought the movements of Tai Chi make a lot of sense. The second benefit of Tai Chi is relaxation. Tai Chi is practiced while focusing on your breathing. By paying attention to your breath and concentrating on the present moment, you can free yourself from the distractions of a busy daily life. Even for a moment, you can be released and feel less tired. You can give your brain a rest. After finishing Tai Chi, your body feels pleasantly tired and you feel a sense of accomplishment, yet your mind is very clear. After that, I got a lot done. I really think Tai Chi is an excellent exercise. So I looked into research on this and found a study conducted in Oregon, United States of America. It involved 256 elderly people between the ages of 70 and 92. In this study, participants were divided into a group that practiced Tai Chi and a group that did stretching exercises together. They continued for 6 months. Surprisingly, those who stretched showed different results. Compared to the stretching group, the Tai Chi group had an 18% lower risk of falling, and their fear of falling was also reduced. When you have a fear of falling, you tend to feel reluctant to leave the house, which leads to a further decline in muscle strength and makes you even more prone to falling, creating a negative cycle. So, losing the fear of falling is truly a wonderful thing. In addition, there was a study conducted in Boston, United States of America. The study focused on people with knee osteoarthritis, with 204 participants split into a Tai Chi group and a physical therapy group. They were divided into groups. Surprisingly, not only the group that didn't exercise, but also the one doing physical therapy. Compared to physical therapy, the Tai Chi group not only had less knee pain, but also improved overall health. They also reported increased satisfaction with their relationships and work. They were less likely to fall. Their knee pain improved. Their overall life satisfaction also improved. I believe Tai Chi promotes health and longevity. So I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it's the best exercise for living a long and healthy life. Tai Chi. Now, if you search on YouTube, you'll immediately find videos that teach you easy ways to do it. So if you're interested, please try experiencing some simple Tai Chi. Let's review lesson 4. Elderly people should walk 5,000 to 7,000 steps daily. Let's exercise about 40 minutes daily. Adults should aim for 8,000 steps and an hour of activity each day. As I said before, don't set goals too high. Even just 10 or 20 minutes of exercise is fine. That alone has health benefits. And not just walking, strength training, stretching and balance exercises are important too. I also explained that, and as the ultimate form of exercise, Tai Chi. This time I introduced it. Tai Chi reduces knee pain as well as the risk of falls and fractures. It helps you relax and focus, benefiting your relationships, work and life, and increase your overall satisfaction. I introduced such research papers. Now, finally, let's see if your muscle mass is relatively well maintained or if it's lacking. I'll explain how to tell the difference. It's called the finger ring test. So everyone use your index finger and thumb to make a ring like this. Then take this ring and wrap it around the back of your thigh to see if your index fingers touch each other in the front. At this time, please bend your knee at a 90-degree angle, and at the thickest part of your calf, wrap your fingers around from the back like this and check if your index fingers touch. If your fingers don't touch at this time, it is said that you have enough muscle mass and the risk of sarcopenia, which is a decrease in muscle mass, is low. On the other hand, if your fingers completely touch, and furthermore, if there is a gap between your legs and fingers, those people are considered to have a high risk of sarcopenia, which means a decrease in muscle mass. I don't want you to get too happy or too upset over this one-time result. Please make sure to check regularly, like after 1 month and then every year, to see if your muscle mass is gradually decreasing. If you notice it's getting thinner and thinner, that means your muscle mass is decreasing. There's a high chance that's the case, so please be mindful of at least one habit I mentioned or consult your doctor. Today, I discussed habits that cause legs and lower back to age quickly, the effects of exercise, and if too much exercise is actually harmful. A risk. And if you actually exercise, try doing about this much. Also, the surprising effects of Tai Chi. And finally, whether your muscle strength is declining or not,